Welcome back to the STEM Career Accelerator. I'm very excited for this lesson. I'm also a little bit nervous because right now I want to take you behind the scenes so that you can see some examples from my career, so that you can copy my systems. But more than anything, the purpose of this is so that you can learn from my mistakes because I made a lot of mistakes in my career. So here are some awful truths about me. I was lost in my identity as a scientist. I glommed on to being a so-called geologist very early on in undergraduate, and that carried through the first few years of my career. And it made me really cultivate that identity. It forced me into thinking very rigidly about what science is, and that I know the facts and I'm objective and that I have all of the answers because I know the facts. I was really imbalanced. I really just didn't have that whole life balance that I'm talking with you about in these lessons. I didn't have the holistic approach to balancing my mind, body, and spirit. I was very much in my mind, only in the cognitive mind. I wasn't able to get out of the rational mind very much and get into the emotional mind and to balance those and get into the wise mind states. Another awful truth is that I didn't trust my corporate managers. And if I didn't trust them, then how could they trust me? It was a difficult proposition to be in that situation. I made it through 12 years in consulting, but it was very challenging. And there were times where I cracked under pressure, where I was not my best self, where I acted unprofessionally. And for many years, I was also a workaholic. Workaholism, it's a real disease. It is a real addiction. I was leaning so heavily into work because I didn't feel balance in the other parts of my life and I didn't know how to achieve it. I was, well, I thought I was career minded, but not in the way that I'm talking to you about it today. So I had to make a lot of these kinds of mistakes and live these awful truths in order to get to the point where I knew how to really make a career transformation. But until I got to that point, I did some really awful things to other people, like micromanaging. I micromanaged my team for at least 2 years. Maybe we all have to kind of go through this process as managers, but I think that if I had been in a different mindset, if I had had a different set of skills, especially skills related to my emotional mind, then I really would have been able to break through the micromanaging mentality earlier. And my team would have benefited individually and collectively because of that. I also burned bridges. Probably the thing that I regret most about parts of my career was burning some bridges. Fortunately, I didn't burn all my bridges. I've had some amazing mentors. I'm very fortunate to have had such a strong lineage of mentors. I didn't burn bridges with them, but I burned bridges with a lot of other folks, especially corporate managers. I burned bridges with other colleagues. I let people down at times. Even some of my clients, I probably didn't perform to the level that they needed me to perform, which ultimately can harm those relationships and possibly burn bridges. Overall, the whole point of me telling you about these awful truths is that I was deeply unhappy. I was deeply dissatisfied with my life, and my career was not delivering my life. And that's where I learned a really important lesson that I have been teaching to you since the beginning of this, which is that a career is a part of your life that is there to serve your lifestyle. Your life is bigger than your career. Your life purpose is greater than your career purpose, but that's why we got to get some deeper purpose into your career so that it really helps you to balance your career with your life. So, my biggest mistakes in living through those awful truths, the biggest one was that I did things in reverse. Now, I teach you a 3-step system, but I kind of went backwards with it. The first thing that I decided to do since the time I was an undergrad to the time I went to grad school to the time I started to work as a professional was that I chased achievement. I chased every single career milestone I could possibly get to. I had a very accelerated early career, but only from the standpoint of kind of hitting these key career milestones. I got my professional registration and licensure as soon as I could. I was a supervisor as soon as I could be. I was managing clients as soon as I could. I was going before government checking panels and working with government clients, revising government guidelines, doing all of these things in my early career, getting promotions as quickly as I could, and trying to get the so-called respect and the stature in the industry of being an expert in landslide hazards and an expert in engineering geomorphology. The problem is that I didn't celebrate my accomplishments along the way. I didn't celebrate the accomplishments related to my professional career, and I didn't celebrate the accomplishments related to my practice and being an expert. And because I didn't reward myself, I just kept pushing. And so I was running this sprint instead of running a marathon. And a career is a marathon. A lifetime is a marathon. If you sprint, you will burn out, just as I did. You got to pace yourself. And having a deep purpose really helps you to set the pace. Having a practice helps you to deliver that pace. And knowing that expertise is built over your entire career, your entire lifetime, relieves you of the responsibility to get from A to Z in the first few years of your career. Ambition is not a bad word, but hustling is a bad word. So be ambitious, but don't hustle. Pace yourself. The worst mistake I made was I put my expertise above quality relationships. I knew relationships were important, but I didn't really know what that meant. So I didn't really try to cultivate my relationships, at least not all of them. I think that there is a responsibility for every professional to cultivate relationships, even though you don't necessarily see value in them right away, because it's not about transacting, it's about relating. I learned something in this process. What I learned is that when you put expertise before purpose, it results in a lot of pain. I thought that my primary career purpose was to become a world-class expert in landslide hazards and engineering geomorphology. And I became that expert, but it came at a cost. And frankly, I was so lost after over a decade working on my career, developing my profession, honing my expertise, that I needed a break. I needed a reset. Now, frankly, this coincided with the pandemic that started in 2020, and this was a major reset for many people. It was a very stressful time for the entire world. And so there's no wonder that everything kind of came together at this time or came apart at this time. But I was productive in my break. I was very productive in resetting because what I did was I quit my corporate job and said, no more. No more do I want to do this. This does not make me happy. I like being an expert. I love geology. I love geohazards, but that's kind of where I get to with what gets me joy out of this job. I'm out. And so I became a farmer and a homesteader, and I lived off grid, and I raised crops and chickens for a year, and I learned a ton in this process. But the lessons that I learned about growing food, about being a small commercial farmer, selling veggie boxes, selling at farmers markets, how to grow thriving organic vegetables, frankly, those lessons were not as important as the life lessons that I learned. I started Foothill Fairy Farms. I learned to build organic soil, to grow organic crops. I learned how to live off grid. I learned how to build a solar power system, an off grid solar power system. I learned how to subsist. I learned how to live very humbly in a very basic lifestyle. I also learned to become a much better cook. And I learned the balance that comes with putting your life first. But even though I quit that job, even though I left the professional industry, I didn't leave my career behind. And although I made mistakes, I never failed. And this was a key turning point in my mindset because I focused on the lessons learned, not on the mistakes that I made. And in achieving this new understanding, I realized that every achievement that I gained needed to result in a reward, but I needed to plan for the rewards in order to really make it authentic. And I learned that the key to the career, to my life, was a balanced momentum. I had plenty of motivation. I had motivation in my career, but I didn't have a balanced momentum. I had motivation to become a farmer, but I didn't have balanced momentum to rebalance every part of my career and my life. And I realized that fundamentally, people came first. I needed to put myself, my self care, my life before my career. And in my personal relationships, those needed to be before my professional relationships. And in my professional relationships, they needed to come before my expertise, before my practice, before my career. People first. And so, in getting back on track, I went from over 10 years working in the private sector, working in academia during that time, and before that, working a little bit in government. But Foothill Fairy Farms and becoming a certified permaculture designer, those were the things that really helped me to reset and rebalance my life. Quite a privilege to be able to do this. And during that process, I realized that I need a coach. And I got a coach, and I became a certified professional life coach in that process. And I started New Terrain Academy. And I was building New Terrain Academy for not even quite a year when I realized how much I missed being part of a team, how much I missed working with people. Now, I love working with my professional life coaching and career coaching clients, and that fulfills me very deeply. But it's not the same as working as a professional scientist and engineer. It's not the same intellectual satisfaction that I got. It's not the same types of problem solving challenges that I got. And I realized I want to do both. But I knew that I didn't want to go back to a corporate job. I knew I didn't want to go back to consulting. So instead, I found myself an awesome government job and made yet another career transformation. And now I work at an amazing state agency producing basic science and applied science. I'm a team leader and I get to be a career coach, both to the people that I supervise and manage on the job and to my clients at New Terrain Academy. I am truly blessed. Despite the mistakes that we make in our lives and our careers, we can always get back on track. We can always turn mistakes into lessons learned. We can always grow. And that is what I learned through cultivating a growth mindset. Deeper purpose has to come first. Deeper purpose is what allows you to develop and cultivate the growth mindset. It's what allows you to engage with people authentically, to put those relationships before anything else. And I realized through the process of getting my own life coaching that my deeper purpose in life was to teach and to mentor. And so what I learned was that if it's my deeper purpose in life, I knew how to develop a career. I knew how to become an expert. I knew how to become a professional practitioner. And so why not match my deeper life purpose of being a teacher and mentor with my career? And then I realized that's what I was doing the whole time. I just wasn't doing it intentionally. because I became an expert by teaching others how to do what I do. And I became a coach by mentoring others to be a professional, to do better than I was doing. And that is really the mark of a mentor. A mentor is someone that brings you along to the point that you get past where they are. That is really the value of mentorship. That is what makes a great mentor, is that they make an even greater mentee out of that relationship. I realized that because teaching and mentoring weren't just about something that I did, it wasn't like reading a book, it wasn't like sitting there for hours on end and learning how to run computer models or to do mapping or to do various types of quantitative analysis. Those weren't all things that I was doing in isolation. Teaching and mentoring was about people, it was about relationships. And so I realized my career depended fundamentally on relationships. And my deeper purpose connected with relationships. I can't teach, I can't mentor if I don't have relationships with other people. Ultimately, I realized that my happiness in life and in my career, it depended on connecting my deeper purpose to my practice as an expert. This is how I developed my three-step system: purpose, practice, expertise. It took me decades to develop this three-step system. It took me decades to figure out what the perfect order was for these three words and to know deeply what each of them means. And so if you want to transform your career, I hope that you agree following my three-step system: purpose, practice, and expertise is the way to get there. I hope you don't mind that I talked a lot about myself. It's not something that I really feel comfortable doing all the time, but it was important for me to be vulnerable and authentic in this lesson so that you could really understand where I'm coming from and to hopefully learn from my mistakes, because I don't want you to make the same ones if you can avoid it. Thanks for listening, and I'm super excited to see you in the next session.